Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, simulcasting on the Sparta HQ Network. I'm Mr. Bennett, joined by my partner, as always,
This is Sparta!
the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panayotis. Yasu, my brother, what's going on?
What is going on, man? How are you tonight?
I'm all right. I'm trying to stay warm. I don't get it. It's like 90 degrees midweek and 40 degrees this afternoon. So I don't get it. It's this weather is still kind of haywire and whatnot. I'm trying to put my winter wardrobe away, and this weather keeps being very unpredictable, and so I'm just trying to stay with it, man. But I'm just hoping that we get a warming trend that stays this time, and not just for a day or two, or sometimes even a day. It was like 75 degrees on Saturday, and by nighttime it was like 40 degrees. So again, this weather is just very unpredictable at this point. But other than that, doing pretty well, and certainly looking forward to this show and next week's show. So again, tonight we're talking about nonprofit organizations, and you see from the title, are they legit, or a lot of these guys are straight up scamming people, and so I want to have a broad discussion on that. And then next week's show, I'm going to just give you guys a heads up. We're going to talk about taxes next week. I mean, obviously, hopefully everybody's either filed their taxes by now or put those extensions in, and hopefully you guys got a nice return, or at least you don't owe certainly a ton of money from taxes, or you got the money to write the check to pay your taxes with. But I want to get into the taxes a little bit, and maybe some alternatives to how people are taxed now. Versus and how tax policy also works in other countries. So definitely look forward to that conversation in next week's show, and then following that we may have like another call-in show following that to do a reset. But how about on your end? How's your weekend?
It was quiet overall. Just relaxed. Played some video games. Nothing crazy.
I got you. Nice. All right. Well, again, I'm going to ask everyone, certainly when you come in tonight, make sure you hit the like button, certainly as you come in, both here, and hop over to Sparta HQ Network. Also, consider becoming a subscriber to the networks. And certainly as you watch the show tonight, certainly you can donate, certainly to the Sparta HQ Network. You can certainly, you see Black Men Unfiltered is the Cash App you can give to, or you can drop a super chat to the network, and certainly anything that you would have for us. Again, we appreciate any support that you give us. Certainly, here's our Cash App scrolling at the bottom of the screen. But like I said, just given the time of year with the tax and everything, I want to take a deeper dive into this and just looking at just different organizations and whatnot. So I want to do ahead of time a bit of a level set. But before we even get into that, when I say like nonprofit organization, like what's like the first thing that comes to your mind when you talk about nonprofits? Like what's the first thing that kind of leaps up?
Wounded Warrior Project off my head.
The what project?
Wounded Warrior Project.
Wounded Warrior. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one.
They had some scams going on years ago about the guy who was running it was like flying out with a private jet. He was eating
exactly,
yeah. And that can, you gotta be careful which organizations you go with, because sometimes they're not as honest as they say they are.
100%, and that's part of what we're going to kind of get into tonight. So break down, what is a nonprofit organization, and different setups of them. And for a lot of them, some of these guys, you might be surprised to learn of some of these organizations that are nonprofits. And is it for just marketing purposes that they label themselves nonprofit, so it doesn't look like, oh, we're not making any money? No, best and believe they're making a ton of money, millions, if not billions of dollars. And so, and again, a lot of the executives of these organizations are highly compensated for what they do. So is this just a shell for rich people to hide a lot of their money or get additional tax breaks and incentives that they really don't need? Are these just shelters, tax shelters for people, rather than an honest and genuine effort from people who want to give to those who are less fortunate or benefit to society in ways that that has lasting benefits? But you have to ask yourself, are in fact these people really giving anything to certain people? So I want to kind of certainly do a deep dive into that. I remember growing up, you all seen the commercials. When I was growing up, nonprofits were like the Feed the Hungry campaigns. They would have like this footage from Africa or whatnot, and they say for 5 cents a day you can feed a child in Africa, and they'll send you they'll send you a picture of the person as they're growing up and everything. There'll be correspondence, and the ones that get me today are the ones that are with the animals. They'll play like some really sad song in the background. You see all these puppies and kennels and whatnot, and ASPCA related ads and whatnot on the pets and whatnot. And that breaks my heart too, because I've been to dog shelters when we were looking for our dog. I considered getting a shelter dog, but the thing that I saw when I went in there, they were full of pit bulls and pit bull mixes. A lot of these people got them because they thought they were cute, and then when they realized they couldn't handle them, they all sent them there. And we all know that if they're not adopted in a certain period of time, that it's basically it's the end for them. So I feel really sad when people adopt pets or abandon pets or don't take pet ownership or pet stewardship seriously. So again, when I see those ads on TV, it's like, yeah, you want to go to your wallet and give. But if I gave to like every charity, I wouldn't have anything on my own. So you certainly, they definitely pull to your heartstrings in terms of giving to the less fortunate. But again, when you find out again how much of these folks, how much are they making, you start to really realize that, hey, is the money that you're giving, is it actually going for the cause that you are supporting? And are the people most in need, are they getting the benefits of your dollars? And is it just easier or better, instead of giving to an organization, that you just give to somebody, give it to someone directly if there's a need out there, rather than giving to an organization just so you can get a tax write-off? So these are things that questions that we want to explore tonight. And again, let's so get an overview of these 501c type of organizations, and look at some of the things going on. And then towards the end of the show, I want to kind of throw you a curveball to another type of nonprofit organization that certainly is worth talking about as well. And I go, something like this may affect us personally, but I think it's a worthy of a discussion as well. So I'll save that towards the second half of the show. But let's get into this a little bit, and let's talk about this to kind of level set the conversation, as I like to do. Let's get into these organizations and talk about nonprofits and what they are. So, I started. So let's start here. Let me go back. Sorry. To my first slide. So again, what is a 501c? Because most nonprofits, they're going to start under a 501c designation. And so again, there's people don't know that a lot of people talk about a 501c3. Churches fall under that. Different help organizations sort of fall under that. I know daycare centers and childcare organizations tend to fall under that, but the reality is there's 29 different 501c type organizations that are exempt from taxation. And I've never quite gotten an idea as to why. The simplest explanation I ever got was, well, a lot of these organizations basically do things that the government doesn't have to do. And so if the government doesn't have to throw things on, and people are skeptical of government spending, that if you can get private organizations to do a lot of the work that these private institutions are willing to do, then give them a tax break. But there's a lot of organizations that can take, that can, again, raise revenues but not pay taxes on the revenues that they're generating. Whereas like, you and me, we're limited to the tax codes of the country. So 29 different organizations exempt from taxation. And you see here religious, charitable, scientific, testing, public safety, literacy, or educational purposes. And again, the idea is to foster national or international amateur sports, or to prevent cruelty to children or to animals. As I said earlier, certainly I see a lot of those ads on certain networks. They play those ads to death. According to federal regulations, none of the earnings from these organizations can go to a single person, nor should the funds be collected for use in political or legislative lobbying activities. Now, this is also a sort of a gray area for me as well, because I see a lot of these nonprofit organizations, rightly or wrongly, involved in a lot of political activity. They'll kind of say with a wink that, hey, we're a nonprofit organization, we're non-political or whatever, but a lot of them are absolutely about that lobbying and doing activities that are these organizations, it's almost like a trade-off. It's like, because we're non-political, yeah, you can get the tax break, but it's what's supposed to happen is, if you want to get political, then why should you get an exemption because you choose to be part of a political process or start supporting different political parties? And so this is something that, for me has always been a gray area is late, because you have a lot of these organizations who take advantage of their non-profit status, but are very hyper political, in my view, in a lot of ways. But just generally, this is what a 501c is, and you can see the differences here. So again, under the 501c 3 umbrella, the main reason for 501c3 is because the money that you give to that organization is tax deductible for the one who's giving it. Other types of 501c's, you don't get that benefit. But if I give to a 501c organization, if I give to Goodwill or the Red Cross or something, I get a little voucher or whatever, and I can, claim that on my tax return as, hey, I gave to a charity. So again, that takes, that's an exemption that I can claim on my tax returns. And so, so a lot of people want to go the 501c3 route because of that tax deductible nature for those who are giving to the organization. Other organizations you can give to, but you may not get that. But that organization can still profit from that. So again, the 501c3 qualify for tax deductible donations. That is a major distinction with them and other types of 501cs. And again, you have different clubs. So again, 501c4 for social welfare, 501c5 for labor and agricultural, 501c6 business organizations. Again, why would a business organization need a tax break? But again, it's sort of built into the code. So in the conversation I want to have next week, I want to talk about that. Why are there so many exemptions in the tax code, and is there maybe a better way forward? 501c7s and 8s, clubs and fraternal organizations. I mean, what do they need a tax break? What are they doing that is a benefit to the public where they need that, or is a lot of the benefits are basically for members of these organizations? So why are they getting a tax break, knowing that they're raising funds and they're doing things that that benefit them, but aren't these not in fact creating tax loopholes that these charities and organizations are able to take advantage of? And then we wonder why things are the way they are as far as the tax code. He's some more different types of organizations. Again, all different types of 501c's that are out there. Like I said, there's several of them that people can use and take advantage of. Now, here was the thing that really got me as far as nonprofits. Pete, did you know that the PGA Golf Tour is a nonprofit organization? So, yeah. In fact, a lot of sports organizations were.
Right?
No,
you're shitting me right now.
The PGA Golf Tour is a non-profit organization. In fact, there were several sports leagues in the past that's going to come up on one of the slides that were also non-profits until they changed changed from that designation. And if you look at this here from PGA, the commissioner Jay Monahan, the guy makes almost $15 million a year in a nonprofit organization that doesn't pay any taxes. They're raising hundreds of millions, if not billions, now that the Saudis own them. Hundreds of millions of dollars that they're earning, but they're not paying taxes on that. He may pay taxes on his personal income, but the organization isn't paying any taxes at all. So again, I would ask the question, why does a PGA tour need or deserve a 501c designation? But just going into this here, this is actually an act that was raised in Congress. This is a S2519 Sports League Tax Exempt Status Limitation Act. Okay, so it's still active in Congress, but it gives some information here. The NFL switched to a forced profit structure in 2015, just as Major League Baseball did in 2007. The PGA is now by far the largest sports organization. There are 501c6 reporting over $1.1 billion in revenue in 2020, as well as $3.9 billion in assets. So it's not like you're taking in the money and then spending it on something there. They have assets there that they're acquiring. through this here. The PGA has also announced their intent to keep their status as a nonprofit organization after their widely publicized merger with the Saudi-backed Live Golf organization. So again, this bill or this proposed bill would say that to exclude sports organizations with assets exceeding 500 million. The 500 million threshold would be measured as a rolling average of the organization's assets for the 3 years prior tax years, as reported on the organization's annual 990 tax form. So again, sports organizations have taken this for years. The NCAA is a nonprofit organization, and they rake in billions of dollars every year through private sports. So this is just about helping kids in Africa and whatnot. There's a lot of organizations, even private businesses, that are registered as nonprofit organizations that get to take advantage of tax laws and tax exemptions because of their structure, not necessarily for the aid or what they're doing in society. So like I said, if the whole idea of why you want to be a nonprofit is that you want to help people, it seems like a lot of these people are simply helping themselves. They're not looking necessarily to help other people. So we have to start asking ourselves why these organizations exist. And here's just another title of this organization, Charity Watch. This is those they monitor and they rate different charity organizations on the monies that they take in, how much of that goes to help those that are in need. But you have a lot of these organizations and institutions that where the CEOs of these organizations are highly compensated. So Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, again, almost $7 million in income. City of Hope affiliates, $5 million. American Heart Association, $4.5 million in compensation. Some other ones, Shriners for Children, which is one of the networks that my wife watches. They're playing Shriners ads all the time. You see these kids at the hospital and stuff, and they're making their pitches and whatnot. But the CEO makes over $4 million. Again, other executives at Sloan Kettering, again, $3 million. So again, a lot of these people, National Jewish Health, Michael Salem, $2.6 million. I mean, these people are being highly compensated. Now, this is something that I didn't know. The biggest nonprofit company in the United States is the YMCA. Total revenue, and this article is from 2023, $7.4 billion, with private donations, $1.4 billion in private donations. And because it's a 501c3, those donations are tax exempt. It comes off your taxes when you give to them. Now, mind you, it's a big organization, 2,700 different organizations, 10,000 branches, 19,000 employees, 600,000 volunteers, and was established over 170 years ago. So I'm not saying that the YMCA doesn't have good means or ends, doesn't do a decent work, especially keeping kids out of trouble or whatever. And we all know the song from back in the 70s, YMCA and all that. But this is a major, there's corporations, private and public corporations, that are not as big as the YMCA. Yet they benefit from a tax exempt status. So again, this is so
the only one who's going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You know how I don't have a filter. If the company makes a certain amount of money a year, let's say $5 billion, whatever the number is, that should not be counted as a nonprofit anymore. If you're making it so much money, you don't know what to do with it at the point, like the YMCA, for example. After this year, that what was it? 7.4 billion, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
At that point, I don't consider them a nonprofit anymore. I consider them as a corporation.
Right.
Multiple locations. There's one literally next to my house, and they're expanding as we're speaking.
Right.
So yes, they do good work in kids off the street, teach them, martial arts, weightlifting, basketball. Not denying that, but you cannot consider that a nonprofit at this point. Because have you seen the rates to join YMCA? It's not cheap.
No, I haven't. What are they looking at for membership fees?
I'm gonna look it up right now.
And those membership fees, they're not tax deductible. From what I understand, though, they're not tax deductible. But yeah, how much is a membership to a YMCA?
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, all right. I'll just continue while you're looking that up. Just wanted to go here. Now, this is from Forbes. Now, the only exception I would make, so I agree in principle to what you're saying, that a company or nonprofit that's making that kind of money, should they be considered nonprofit status? Now, from what I understand,
I'm sorry, Paul.
certain,
Fast.
what's
The
that?
the really fast. The fees for adult, one adult is $50 a month.
Okay, so it's basically that like of a gym, like a like
Yeah.
a major gym chain, like an LA Fitness or something like that. So it's not terrible. But again, but what you pay there, it's not like you can go and just write that off. To hey, I belong to a YMCA and write it.
Now for a teen is $22.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
like I said, not too bad.
Youth is 15, and that's only the basic stuff like the weight room and basketball court. Nothing crazy. Now, if you want to do more, the fees go up. Obviously, more
Mhm.
you add to your membership, more it is. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Now this next slide here, this is from Forbes, where it ranks nonprofit organizations, and basically what they try to do is, and again, I'm still not sure where they get these numbers from, but the idea here is for the organization, based on the donations that are given to the organization and the revenues to the organization, there's an efficiency score that's given for those organizations. So again, the higher the number, the more efficient. Meaning, and I would think that of the monies that they're raising, a good portion of that money goes towards those who the organization is supposed to support. So again, Feeding America, you would think that mass majority of the money, 4.9 billion in donations, total revenue 5.14 billion, but they have an efficiency rating of 99%. Now, does that mean that 99% of that $5.14 billion is that actually going to feed the people that they are serving, or does that pay all of the people that they employ that then go and try to feed the people what's left over? Again, I don't know, to do a deep dive there, but as you can see, a lot of these organizations are ones that we're familiar with. Okay, so Feeding America, St. Jude Children's Hospital, United Way, Salvation Army. Again, the YMCA is ranks 12th on the list. Boys Club of America is also a nonprofit. And we all know some of the issues with the Boys Club of America that have come up as of late, but they still get over $1 billion a year in donations. Total revenues, 2.9 billion, an 87% score. But again, how much of that is simply feeding the beast, feeding the institutional structure, the buildings, everything that it takes to run the organization, employees, etc., versus actually helping the people that the money is going there for. So again, the idea is, if you want to give, is it better to give directly to an individual or something that you believe in, or if you give to one of these organizations, Habitat for Humanity? I've worked with them in the past. I like the idea of going to someone's home and either building a home or redoing a home or whatnot, planting gardens in a home, and helping a lot of senior citizens and helping them in terms of make the home more habitable and whatnot. I mean, I love doing that. In fact, I was trying to find a local branch out here that I could do some work with. This was with a former employer, and we were up in North Jersey doing it, but I was looking for something more local here. I would love to get some guys together and, hey, let's go and help some of these folks with houses, paint the house, or do something to really help a lot of these people out. But again, how much of this is feeding the beast? And certainly when you see a lot of the CEOs, what these people are making. Now, again, if you're doing $1 billion a year, $10 million is a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's kind of insane when you think about it, that $10 million is 1% of $1 billion. So they say, yeah, we certainly, it's not like these owners are taking all the money or whatever. It's a drop in the bucket. But again, how much of this money is actually going to the boots on the ground and to those in need? To me, it's a question for me. And again, I've worked with or given to, donated in the past, all these organizations. But we have the Salvation Army, for example, $5.437 billion in revenues. And again, a lot of things that you give, if you get clothes to Salvation Army or whatever, they go back and resell those clothes anyway on the open, in their stores and in their outlets and whatnot. They're selling merchandise.
One thing
Yeah.
the Salvation Army people don't understand, they're also a organization religion too. So
Yeah, they're a Methodist. Yeah, Salvation Army. Because I actually talked to a minister who was at a site one time, and they're actually of the Methodist denomination by background.
that part I did not know, but
Yeah.
I know there are also a religion. So, do you really consider a nonprofit at this point? If they're like a religion and a business, who
Well, that's what we're going to talk about later in the show. But I think a lot of it depends on the aims of the organization, the number of people that you're helping. I mean, you see the guy with the bell at Christmas time. He's ringing the bell for people to put in their coins and pennies and whatnot, raising monies in the cold during the wintertime or whatnot. So even just from visually, it's hard to imagine that the Salvation Army gets over $5 billion a year. Now, I know they help a lot of people, but it's just like, where's this money going if the guy who's willing to stand out in the cold and do all that, but the CEO is making like $6-7 million a year? I don't know how that breakdown kind of works, within the organization. But nevertheless, though, they don't pay taxes on the bulk of that revenue. The salary that you are going to pay to that CEO, he or she may pay any employees of the organization. I'm sure they're paying federal and state and local taxes. But as far as for the remaining revenue, I don't know if they're paying any taxes on that whatsoever. And again, whether or not they should or not, that's another question. But that is certainly an exemption that they get because of their status.
The last several years for Christmas time, I have not seen anybody SIs ringing a bell anymore, and that's I thought it was dead, to be honest with you. But in Jersey, does this do that?
Yeah.
Walmart's,
Stop and Shops. I mean, some of the local stores around, but definitely at the Walmarts, I've seen them. Home Depot, I've seen them and I'm sure they have to go in and say, hey, can we do this here? But yeah, I'll still see the guys with the bell and the pot or whatever, where people are just putting their nickels and dimes, and I'll still see that on occasion, and that could be just a local affiliate who just decides that, hey, let's go out and do this, especially if you're talking about Black Friday, or the heavy shopping times of the year, especially in the wintertime when people are really spending a lot of money. Then people, I guess they're more in the giving spirit around that time. So I can certainly see why they do that. But yeah, even this past year, I've seen those guys out there doing their thing. Absolutely.
I haven't seen them in years, to be honest with you, bro. At least 5 years, I haven't seen them. I thought that was like dying out. Maybe they're doing it in my area.
Right.
But Walmart is always booming at that time of year. The crossings is definitely booming right here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at least in my area in PA, I have not seen them in years.
Yeah.
So I found that it was like, you just donate online now. I thought something like that. And I'm sure I wasn't surprised they have something donate online either.
Yeah, for sure. Again, these just rounding up the top 25 organizations, the American Heart Association, again, $729 million in revenue, donations, 1.3 billion in total revenues. Again, they give a lot of information, but even then, as just giving that information, like how much is the American? Are they finding cures for heart disease or whatever, or are they just trying to educate people on heart disease? But nevertheless, again, they get a huge tax break as a result of that. Got a couple more here before I break. Did you also know that most colleges and universities are nonprofit organizations?
Bullshit.
They're nonprofits.
That's some bullshit right there.
So I'm just saying.
That is the biggest
so if you look at
business out there.
Yeah. So again, the majority. So you have nonprofits, you have public, and then you have for-profit institutions, universities. Look at the average cost of tuition and fees at a 4-year nonprofit. It's like $50,000. It's like, it's like people talk about, is it even worth it to go to a 4-year college institution? Obviously you have to go if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or, something like that. You have to go for, to get those skills. You want to be an engineer, to go. But yeah, but a lot, and you look at a lot of campuses now, what they're paying on. Yes, they're getting private donations from, wealthy donors and whatnot who going out. And then, again, I don't hate anybody go out there, become a billionaire, build companies and whatnot, and you give a $1 billion endowment to a university to build a new health lab or medical facility for research and all that. Yeah, I guess you can do that. But but again, as far as the outcomes, 90% posted a positive median for return of investment for students, college experience, again, under typical college undergrad experience, less personalized, completion rate, 68%, 6-year completion rate for first-time full-time students, full-time bachelor students, compared to for the for-profits, again, a much lower graduation rate over that of the nonprofits. So again, but does that in and of itself, does that justify the triple the cost to go to a school like that? Especially if you go out of state, any school that if my daughters went out, in fact, they all wanted to go out of state at one time. Every school that we looked at, Howard or any schools in Virginia, Johns Hopkins, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. But again, they have a lot of money. They put a lot of work into these campuses. I know Rutgers has really built up a lot of their facilities to make them more attractive, again, for recruiting purposes. Okay, so people say, well, why are they spending all this money? Again, it's to make the campus look nicer, to recruit. You want D1 athletes, you want, exposure, you want people going to your university to justify the cost that they're spending. So they're going to beautify the place in order to, make it more attractive so students want to come there. But that's still a big bill. And a lot of people now, they're starting to, question, is a 4-year degree really worth it unless you're going to a very specialized skill that requires that 4-year degree? A lot of people starting to ask the question. But yeah, a lot of these schools, nonprofits, and, highly compensated presidents and chancellors, and, a lot of money that's being poured in. But again, are the students, are they getting out of it? Because it's like we pay through the nose for everything. We pay through the nose for books and for, just the student fees and all these other things that we're paying to them. But what is the school paying in return? Not much. So again, you have some major sports organizations. You have a lot of these charitable organizations that are doing billions of dollars. You have these schools that are making a lot of money as well as nonprofits. And I'll stop sharing here because I know I shared a lot here, and so I don't want to get lost in the conversation. But yeah, there's a lot going on here with these institutions that are making a lot, but they pay nothing in taxes or no substantial money in taxes. So just overall, what so again, your thoughts on that, or again, if you want to make an exception, I'm not here to say should they or shouldn't they. I'm asking the question, or under what circumstances should an institution that's bringing in that kind of revenue, should they be exempt from taxes, whereas the local guy on the ground that he's paying whatever he or she is paying in taxes? So just your general thoughts on it. Again, I spent a lot of information. I just want to go through and look at just some of the chats. And again, we appreciate your patience here because again, there was a lot to go through. But Pete, your general thoughts on this as I just kind of go through and show some of the chats. And again, we thank you guys for being with us tonight. And so go ahead.
A lot of gray area, like no fun intended, of course, with our show, but it's a lot of gray area on like how people can call themselves nonprofit when they're not nonprofit. Colleges are a great example. They're nonprofit. I worked for a college twice, for ESU and Lehigh University. If you see the meal plans, those goddamn meal plans are so expensive. It's not even funny. And you cannot say they're nonprofit because the company I was working for has to make some money. I get that, but the school hires them. So if you've seen $1,500 for a week that's a lot of money for a meal plan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm shooting very low too because I don't remember the exact numbers. You might know numbers better than I do. With your kids' meal plans.
Oh yeah, they were up there.
Yeah, they're a couple grand, I think, isn't it?
Easy. Actually, it was more like closer to 3,000 for the year. But again, when you break it out, to meal, put it this way: if they could save some money if they want to like cook their own meals and whatnot. Could they save some money on that, yeah. But I mean, certainly you go in between classes, you may not have time to cook a meal or whatever. So again, so I think towards the end, my last two daughters, they kind of did like a hybrid, and even my daughter now, who's in medical school, they don't have like a meal plan there. So everything they do in medical school, they have to buy. So again, in your dorm, you have to buy your own food, which is very expensive on the island. And they have to, so she has to really budget her money. But again, every time she goes to the store, she spends a couple $100s a week just because of the exorbitant price of things. She's not getting a lot of food, but she has to make very kind of small meals, and she's gotten really good at budgeting her funds like that. But yeah, but the dollar, it's everything is 2 to 3 times more expensive down in that country.
Yeah, but the other thing, is I'm not the only one who says it, but I think colleges are the biggest scam in the world because some things you don't need for your degree, you have to take courses like history. Like if you're going to be a doctor, like your daughters, what do you need history for? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So they just give you all the extra courses so they can raise the price of what they're costing. At that point, they're not nonprofit. No in hell you telling me a university is only making $7 million a year. They're making probably fucking $7 billion a year. All those kids are going to schools.
Mm-hmm.
So and the same thing with the donation place we were just talking about. They're no in hell they're not a nonprofit because you're donating the clothes, they are reselling it. That is a business model at this point. Now, if they're donating part of the money they're reselling to, let's say, a shelter or some kind of cause, yeah, I can get that then. You know what I'm saying? But you're still making money, so you cannot consider it a nonprofit, and that's what irks me with this nonprofit because the considered as nonprofit, but when they're not nonprofit, making money, yes, their employees have to get paid. I'm not denying that, but when the CEOs are making 7, 8, 9 millions a year, how is it nonprofit, Paul?
Yeah, I think there's something in the term itself, like the marketing of it. And again, why does the government give these type of breaks? Like I said, I thought it was because again, if the organization is doing something, so if you're feeding the homeless, or you're housing the homeless or something like that. I thought, okay, well, if a private organization decides to do it, we don't have to do it. We got other stuff we need to be spending our money on. So yeah, give them a tax break and let them do the logistics because everybody complains about, and it is ridiculous. I mean, the government spending in this country, again, nobody wants to do an audit. Nobody wants to do, I mean, the whole Doge thing was supposed to get rid of a lot of the waste and spending, and we found out that really didn't do a whole lot to change things with the Doge thing and Elon Musk. But but everyone certainly agrees that the cost of things, especially when you talk about the military, how much people are paying for equipment. You look at even hospitals. Again, what they charge for like aspirin's like $75 a tablet. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous that when you get your medical bill from the hospital, how much are they looking to charge? And then medical comes in and I guess covers most of that. But it's just how we price things. It's not based on any kind of market dynamics that you and I may work with in the marketplace. And so I can understand people saying a private organization might be better at managing the cost of things over that, so we don't have to do it. And then people don't come after us saying, hey, you're charging this much money to administer something when it really shouldn't cost that much. So again, that I get. But even with these organizations, again, I don't know if the monies that they're raising for these purposes, whether it be sporting organizations or feeding the hungry, helping the poor, whatever it is, I don't know if the monies that you're raising is going. I mean, you had Coach, he talked about the average for a Salvation Army captain, CEO, it says the average annual pay for the Salvation Army CEO is $78,000 a year. I'd have to go back because I thought that was one of my slides in terms of the profit, CEO pay, but I'll go and verify that might be for like one of their captains or something like that. But I need to see if the CEO is in fact making that kind of money. But we showed several instances where you have a lot of these CEOs making tens of millions of dollars for these organizations. So
now, I'll give you a good example, Paul. When I work for the hospitals, right? Average meal, whatever the numbers are, you know what I'm saying? So it's so much waste that food is not even funny. You can't donate it either because somebody gets sick, you get sued and all this stuff. But the food wise, we are throwing away in the thousands in a way. So if you say you prep for 200 patients for argument's sakes, and you're only cooking for 100, 120, maybe 150, the other 150 is going right in the garbage. You can't save that stuff.
Mhm.
So they charge them like I remember seeing plastic bags coming in because it says medical bags, and plastic bags are just plastic bags for garbage, nothing
Mhm.
different. But
Right.
because it's the word medical, they're charging 10 times more. When I met the CEO of the hospital, who runs all the networks, he told me simple, like a lot of people don't pay, and that's good for us. When they don't pay, that means the government kicks in and pays us. We get paid no matter what.
Mhm.
So again, that is a nonprofit again.
Right.
But
Right.
how is that nonprofit if the state is paying your salary? And these guys are not driving like beat up cars or anything. Like they're driving some nice cars. They have nice houses and all this stuff.
Mhm.
How is that a nonprofit then?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, revenues are being generated and assets are being bought. It's not like I said, if you gave me $100 and $90 of it went to help the people who the charity is for, all right? If I want to feed some kids or something like that, I said I got no problem with that. It's like it's about what's the money. It's not about the money that's being brought in. It's where the money is going. And like I said, in a lot of these organizations, they own things, they own assets, they own real estate, they own property. And, and a lot of that, like I said, is exempt from taxation. Now, again, if you're a savvy business guy, we got our guy Trey Taylor in the building. He's like, look, I don't pay money. Again, the way he makes his bag, he doesn't pay taxes either. And that might be just, based on how he, how he earns his money. And so it's like, why should corporations pay money also? I mean, so again, for some people, we have our president who said, I don't pay taxes. It's not because I'm cheating. It's because I'm smart. He's smart enough to take advantage of the tax code as it's laid out, which is why next week's show I want to talk about the tax code or how things generally are done in this country and why shouldn't a corporation pay taxes, or should we just do away with all these loopholes and exemptions, get rid of all these 501s, just do a flat tax and everybody just pays, and that there's no inequality in the tax code. But for some, they're saying you're stupid. Our president said you're dumb. If you're paying taxes, if you're making millions of dollars and you're paying half of that in taxes, you're dumb, because there's so many tax loopholes and exemptions. There's places you can put your money. There's offshore. There's all these different things that if you have a smart accountant, if he's savvy, he should be able to move money around so you're paying very little taxes at all. And that's always been the argument that, Bernie Sanders and a lot of these other politicians, they talk about, why are these corporations making all this money and not paying any taxes, whereas we're paying most. Again, some would say we're just dumb. We just don't know any better than these people. And again, so that'll be the bulk of the conversation next week. We can talk about that and the validity of that argument, that maybe we just need to be smarter with how we report our money, or start a business, or start a nonprofit, do the same work but start as a nonprofit to hide the money. So again, some people just know how to take advantage, but it's the system itself at the end of the day responsible for the blame that as to why things are the way they are, So again, how much of does our own government, what do they have to do in this particular situation? So I think that's a good conversation. And again, I'm looking forward to having that conversation next week. Shout out to Liberty Twitcher, as usual, certainly very active in chat tonight. Again, we appreciate it. University of Chicago, the number of students qualifying as disabled has tripled over the past 8 years. At UC Berkeley, it's quintupled in the last 15 years. Prefer that corporations provide jobs and not be punished for it. They continue to contribute to society as much as the government does. So again, that's a move. I'm not saying one or the other. That's again, that could be a valid conversation, especially for next week. And certainly, I think we certainly agree that what our government does with the monies that we give it, we could certainly have some questions about that. And does there need to be an accountability? I know certainly in the military and a lot of other areas, there's a lot of waste and mismanagement there, and these organizations every year they're asking for more money, of our money to pay for some of these things. So again, these are valid questions to ask, but as far as nonprofits, or just allowing or enabling these nonprofits to exist, again, I'm asking the question, that should, are we comfortable with the tax code being the way it is, allowing these organizations to be able to, again, generate these revenues and to go on operating? Like I said, like the PGA Tour. Again, why does the PGA Tour that has billions in assets, why do they need a tax break? So that's a thing there. Shout out to our guy Anton, 47, found a way to pay no taxes on his property in Bedminster. He buried his wife on the his first wife on the grounds. As a result, he turned the location into a private cemetery. So again, they get a tax exemption because of that action that the president made. Again, should a lot of that be allowed in the tax? Should we just go to something simpler? So again, we're already sort of teeing up some of the conversation for next week. Are you satisfied with how the things are? Should something like this even be allowed, or should we just go to something that's, again, more fair, for everyone, and that no one can say that they're being taxed or any more than someone else? A lot of voters are okay with fraud. That's why fraud exists. Voters tolerate it. Yeah, I mean, it's but again, certainly tolerating the government or tolerated in the existing tax code for these companies. We got Quiet King, 24. I don't like most companies that label themselves Christian companies unless they are obviously selling Bibles or there's Bible verses on every food bag, like Outburger, etc. So but again, that's kind of a good segue, because I want to get into sort of the last block I want to go into tonight. Yeah.
Really fast. So a couple things. With our government, there's always going to be fraud, corruption. Even in the first election, there was corruption back then. Washington is known for corruption.
Yeah.
Like, can you get rid of that at this point? Absolutely not. If you get rid of those politicians that are corrupted, another one's gonna come into place.
Mm-hmm.
Like a hydra, you cut one head off and two more grows.
Right.
Absolutely the same way. And with our spending in the military, people think when we hear tactical or military grade means expensive and really good, actually means cheap, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the gear they get, these guys are hand-me-downs. The firearms is literally looser than a water fountain. Like, I CQ would probably freaking Anton would tell you the same thing. He was like, "I'll tell you, hey, son of a bitch." But if you pull try put a round through, it's going to be loose, because they don't use and abuse these weapons. Do they need to update the weapon? Of course they do. But the parts, they have them on standby. That's why they want to change them. All this money they're asking for is, some of them is legit, some of them is just stupid. It's usually for projects. They're trying to retire the M16 for years, and they can't, because how cheap is it built?
Right.
Because it's been in production for so many years. They have all these parts in the background.
Yeah.
Now with the Bioverse, I'm gonna let Paul handle that part. I'm gonna say on that one.
All right. Well, let's delve in. I mean, this is so I was kind of holding off on this a little bit. So we talked about the different types of nonprofits that are out there. So again, some sports organizations are nonprofit, a lot of athletic organizations are nonprofit, a lot of colleges and universities are certainly nonprofit. But we have to talk about another type of nonprofit. Now, again, this may stir passions in a lot of different ways. But unfortunately, or fortunately in this country, depending on who you talk to, religion is mostly nonprofit. And so, most churches, for example, enjoy a 501c exempt status. And a lot of people are asking, why should churches not pay taxes? So again, the next slide that I had, let me just go to the next slide here. Just give me a sec. Next slide. So again, just to give you a little information again on churches, on religious organizations and institutions. So do churches pay taxes, exemptions, property taxes, and filings? So again, as far as donations, they're typically exempt from any donations. Federal income tax doesn't apply. Income is tied to exempt religious purpose. Again, if you own something if the church has like a business that they run, like a coffee shop or some other business or merchandise sales, I've seen churches that sell merch. Again, not always their sanctuary in the worship building. Certainly, local property taxes do apply. Rental, commercial property, not always. Again, there's some exemptions there. Employees and ministers, there's no blanket. I said typically payroll, you pay taxes on payroll. But and again, you have a lot of these churches, these mega churches that have large congregations, takes in millions of dollars a year, build these big cathedral type institutions, and a lot of that is tax exempt. Again, and people ask, is what they're giving you? Again, if they're supposed to buy, and some people will argue, and again, we're both religious guys. We go to church, and so people will ask us like, what are you getting for your money? You're paying your tithes and offerings to a church or institution. How much of that money is going back out to help the poor, feed the poor, clothe the naked and the homeless and whatnot, like the Salvation Army does? Again, their whole thing, they don't have big churches or whatever, but a lot of their money is going towards clothing people and other, alcohol services and, just different things. How many churches, the money that you take in, how much of that is simply feeding or taking care of the people who attend that organization? And I'm not just assuming churches. Like I said, we talked about earlier, a lot of these clubs, a lot of these business organizations, a lot of these clubs or organizations, a lot of the monies that they're taking in, even though it's nonprofit, the benefit mostly goes to the members of that organization. And a lot of people will ask, should churches pay taxes? Especially, we also talked about one of the things with a 501c is that they're supposed to be non-political. But we've seen a lot of activity, regardless if you're liberal or conservative or whatever. There are PACs, CPAC. You have a lot of liberal churches and whatnot. They all have been very vocal, certainly in the last number of years, when it comes to politics and backhand endorsement of candidates, which they're, according to the law rules, they're not supposed to be doing. But they enjoy a status that and people are starting to ask the question: should religious organizations, should they pay taxes because of that? So again, we have this idea in terms of what churches pay. Do churches pay property taxes? The answer depends on the use, location, and the law. So again, the chapel, the church itself, there's no property taxes paid on the main building. The factor is mixed commercial use, ownership, exempt use, local filing requirements, parsonage or clergy house sometimes. So sometimes, if the pastor has his house, the church is oftentimes paying for it. Are there taxes paid on that? Not always. Vacant or rental property, often no or unclear. School, classroom, building, often exempt, but not always. Again, church may have like a daycare or some other school or whatever that, again, they enjoy benefits. Again, people may argue that, well, it's because they're providing a service to the community, daycare, or certainly for the local kids in the area or whatnot. Again, people will try to justify the expenses, but this is something that I've heard certainly in recent years for sure, that if churches are going to be political, if churches are going to be more outspoken the way they are, then why should they be excluded? When you see some of these pastors, with Lear jets, you had this one guy, interestingly, his name was Creflo Dollar, made an appeal to his church that he needed a jet, and he wanted $20 million to buy a jet, and that raised a whole lot of issues
with people, and we see a lot of these pastors have these exorbitant lifestyles, and it's like, why shouldn't they not? Why should the church then be exempt from paying taxes because of this? And again, it's not everybody. It's not every. Most churches are small like that. I don't know how the compensation structure works in the Orthodox Church, or in the Catholic Church. I don't know, for sure. But people are starting to ask the question that why should they enjoy a tax exempt status? Because, because again, a lot of things that they do, it is a bit of a slippery slope when it comes to that. So what's your general thought on churches? Out of all the different types of institutions that we talked about earlier, what about churches? Should they be exempt from taxes, or should they pay taxes, on the revenues that they're generating, especially the bigger ones that are building, mega malls and all kinds of other structures? What is your thoughts on that?
So it's very simple. It depends on the size of the church. Like, my church is pretty small. We all know each other in there. I can count literally probably in two hands how many people are regulars and who are not regulars in another hand, if that makes sense. It's not that big. We depend on the festival to run the church all year round. The money from the festival runs the church. By that said, if you're a mega church, you should be taxed the heck out of it. And if you're a mega church that gets involved in politics, you should be charged even more taxes, I think. Because now you not only are trying to pretend to spread the word of God, I call it, because you're not. You're trying to get involved with something you should not get involved with. So if you want to play double advocate, you should be taxed twice, I think. Simple as that. Now, I do not agree the church is paying your mortgage, your car, none of that stuff.
So in the Orthodox Church, so like Father Casadino does, how does he support himself? It's just from the side, he buys all his own living and whatnot. The church doesn't provide in that realm.
No, they don't provide nothing. He gets a paycheck like everybody else does. And then, more rank you build, more experience you build, bigger your check goes, of course. It is known, like, if the priest, bless your house, you're supposed to give him like a little. I call it the priest tip, but it's technically it means more if you give the money. I have spoke to him multiple times about this. Like, money has nothing to do with blessing the house or not. That is a wise tale kind of thing. And a lot of priests are like, those extra few dollars, it goes a long way because they don't make that much. Some priests, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with folks,
I mean, that's one dynamic that I see, at least with certainly with Catholic priests. Like, I don't know many that are like well off. They're not making big time money in doing that. Now, again, whether Rome gets a lot of money, like, the Vatican, they live in pretty opulent. We see the Pope. He has a lot of security, and where he goes, he's in the car that's got the bulletproof glass on it and stuff. So again, it seems like the money's going somewhere up the chain. But generally speaking, most Catholic priests that I know, it's not like they're driving around in Mercedes or Lexus or something like that.
Yeah, I seen priests drive BMWs in the country.
Orthodox priests?
Oh yeah, but they also have a bigger church to run. Bigger church, the more money you're gonna make, obviously. So one of the old priests I used to see back in New York, his name was Father John. Father John drove a really nice BMW, but he ran one of the biggest churches on Long Island. So that goes in varying. Like, if you're in like side of that church, there's probably I don't even want to count how many people are in there, because I wouldn't.
You say like 1,000? Would that be over 1,000 people? Yeah, that's pretty
over
good.
1,000 people on a regular basis. Like, people just show up on, like, say, only on Easter, easy 3,000 or 4,000 easily.
Yeah.
Like, in our church, if we get 150 people on a special holiday like Christmas or Easter, that's a good day for us. And you have to consider it. The collecting baskets they put out. Some people put $1. Some people like I even told my father the other day, like, yo, you guys start doing touch to pay because I don't always have cash on me, dude.
Mhm.
That's the next thing that you're gonna see that in church soon. Like they're gonna like you have like ding touch to pay because a lot of people don't get cash on them.
Yeah.
When the candles, there's $1 a piece. Are they buying it for $1 a piece? Probably not.
Mhm.
They're spending probably in the probably cents, in the
Mhm.
pennies. You know what I'm saying? A case
Right.
probably costs them $50 and probably 200 candles. And they charge $1. Do the math.
Yeah.
If the church is big, not like my church, but my old church in New York, yes, that should have been taxed 100%.
Mhm.
They're making it killing.
Okay.
And the memberships, don't forget about it. Some people have to be a member to attend some things, the board and all that stuff.
Right.
There's
Right.
fees for that too.
Yeah.
Everything's a fee.
Yeah. I want to go back and look at some of the comments. Liberty Switcher made some comments here, and Prince, Anton, he made some comments. So I want to kind of go over some of these a little bit. So again, he makes a case here. Again, if you tax 501c3s, you'll dramatically reduce the amount of donations that go to them. Now, mind you, 501c3, a lot of people want that 501c3 status is because the donations that you give to them are tax deductible. So I don't know how that would affect the 501c3's ability to receive those donations as long as it's as long as the you still get the deduction. Now, if they take away the tax deduction status for a 501c3, I could see why that would lower, but I can't see that just taxing the organization itself, how that would lower that. Now, as far as the political activity, again, a lot of 501c3s do political work, discussed as educational, voter guides, for example, purely political, but they pretend it's educational. Yeah, a lot of them are political, and in one way or another, if not doing that kind of political activism, or put it this way, if you're going to be political, at least can you be nonpartisan political? In other words, if you're saying you're encouraging people to vote, rather than saying you need to vote for this candidate, is that a distinction that if they honor that they should employ? But if you're saying, yeah, I mean, everybody should exercise their constitutional right to vote, and that we need more people voting. Again, I could see them sort of making a case there, but for some people, it is outright campaigning for certain candidates, and I've seen it on both sides of the political aisle when they do that. Anton talks about one religion that people talk about when it comes to taking advantage of tax codes: the Mormons, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah, I mean they're pretty good at money in general in terms of managing it. But yeah, Utah, a lot of those guys, they make a lot of money. And certainly, but again, is the money they're raising, is it going, who's benefiting from that? Is it the Mormons or is it people outside of their church body? And to me, that's a distinction. Again, it's a slippery slope when you start taxing churches. This will also impact churches where most of the parishioners are people of color. We shouldn't do it. Again, I respect that opinion. Again, this is certainly a big gray area for me in terms of, when you see certain activities going on, or when you certainly see some of the sizes of these mega churches and the monies that they're getting, you see these lifestyles and whatnot, and you're wondering, it's like these guys are making all this money and they're not paying anything for it. I know Joel Osteen, I know his church got criticized a lot from back in the day. I think when Houston, they had a big hurricane or something that came through and people were looking for shelters and whatnot, and he wouldn't open up his church. And he made all types of reasons open for that. And then people played video later on saying that no, the place was dry, they didn't have issues or whatnot. But it's like you're getting major tax breaks in the city of Houston, and you're getting 10,000 people in your church every week, and people were like, should he enjoy, or should that church enjoy any tax privileges? Because when there was a crisis or whatnot, it was like, where were they? So again, I think they took a major PR hit for that. Each individual Catholic church is connected with the diocese or archdiocese. For example, Archdiocese of Newark has 211 parishes in their network. Again, very true. Shout out to Braxton in the church tonight. Liberty Switcher, we should double down on fraud. No increased taxes. Everyone knows there's massive fraud. Minnesota isn't the only state. Again, totally agree with that. And again, yeah, a lot of them pretend that they're nonpartisan. I agree, but I think I've seen this on both sides of the aisle here, and so I think that because of we're saying this partisan activity, again, we have to. I think it's fair to ask the question that should churches or religious institutions, just because you're religious. A guy who he was talking about earlier, some people label themselves, again, Quiet King 24. How is a water filtration company a Christian company? Or you have companies like In-N-Out Burger. They label themselves Christian companies, obviously selling Bibles or the Bible verses on every food bag like In-N-Out Burger does. So I guess that's something with the CEO. But is it because they consider themselves like a religious organization? Do they get some exemptions for that? Yeah, is that something that I think needs to be looked into? What's
called that chicken place?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. They say they're a religion company, but are they really?
Yeah, close on Sundays. Close. Yeah. So I think these are. So I think these are fair questions to ask. So all these nonprofit churches, institutions, again, if you're providing a service to the public, like if you are actually doing the work of feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and offering, benefits for the people in your neighborhood around you, then yeah, I can understand wanting to give a break but see, what I would suggest doing, I may want to give you a break on the actual money that you're spending in that role. So, okay, you want a tax break or you want a credit, show me how much based on the revenues that you're bringing in, how much. So if a church has been bringing in, let's say on a hypothetical, you're bringing in $1 million a year. How much of that money went to those activities that I talked about? And whatever that money is, and if you can document that, and that can be verified, then look, we'll give you a tax break or credit because you're actually doing the work. But if the money that you raised went into put projection screens and cameras in your church and update the seating and do all these other types of projects, again, how is that? Why should you get a tax break for that? You raise this money and you're basically feeding it into yourself. That your parishioners, they're the ones that mostly are enjoying the work that you're putting into it. So is that fair in that circumstance? So if your church got a ton of money and they decide, we're going to redo the murals, we're going to redo the seats, we're going to redo all this kind of stuff, should that money get taxed? Or not? What do you think of that? It's not going.
Church. That's the thing. It really depends. I'm going back to that because it depends on the size of the church. If it's small, it's only about 150 people, and it took them 2-3 years to save up the money to get the seats redone or the icons. No, they're barely surviving. Now, if it's like a big church, yeah, absolutely. Either updating something every year. Absolutely.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, and again, we're going to get into this more next week with the tax discussion. It sounds like to me that you're in favor of progressive taxation, meaning the more money that you make, you should get taxed higher. Now you have some people say no, that shouldn't be the case at all. It should be everybody should pay flat tax. No loopholes, no exceptions. So if you make $10, you pay $1. If you make $100, you pay $10. You make $1,000, you pay $100. It's fair, it's balanced, it's across the board. Whether you're a big church, small church, medium-sized church, it's fair for everybody. But you're saying if it's a small church of 150 parishioners or less, no taxation. But if you're a bigger church that has over 1,000 members, then tax them. So people may ask, why is that? Why is that fair? So it sounds like you're an advocate for progressive taxation, which that's the system that we currently live under now. At least we're supposed to. We know that there's a progressive tax. Certainly, the upper bracket I think is what 20 like 30%, 28, 30%, whatever it is. It used to be back in the day, it used to be 90%. If you made over a certain amount of money, it was like 90% taxation. But, certainly there's been a huge pushback, certainly since the 80s, to drop that tax rate. When Reagan came in, he dropped that tax rate down dramatically on the wealthy. And again, for a lot of people now, they're saying the wealthy are paying less taxes now than they ever did. Again, that's a discussion for next week. And again, some people may say, hey, that they have no problem with that, or they just say they're being smart, taking advantage of the tax code as it is. Or some people say, well, maybe we need to change the tax code to go back to how it was when you were charging, say, 90% on income over like $1 million a year or something. I don't know. I mean, but that's the discussion for next week, and surely you're going to have people for or against that, and a lot of that is also going to depend on where you are. If you got money, yeah, you don't want to pay taxes. but certainly if you certainly if you don't have a lot, then there's the argument that's always made that people need to pay more certainly in taxes.
So really fast, the reason I feel a certain way is people who say, oh, it should balance across the board are usually people who are making more money every year. And they're over 200,000 this year, next 300,000, and so on. But that's my opinion. My opinion should be straight around the board. If you make more money, you pay more.
Mm-hmm.
That's how life works, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it kind of hurts the people who are the hardworking people who are making more money. Honestly, yeah, it sucks for them.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, dude. But even me, I know my pay rate went up dramatically the last couple of years,
mm-hmm.
and I know I got to pay more now in taxes.
Right.
I'm not getting nowhere near what I used to get. I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because more I earn from my house, more you have to give back. That's how it's supposed to work in this country.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised. More you make, more more they take from you, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying now you're a flat rate because so it's fair. I'm making 70,000 a year. I'm paying the same amount of money. Someone who's making $1.5 million a year. Fuck you! I say that.
Mm-hmm.
He can suck my hairy Greek shiny ass at that point.
Right. Well, again, it's even with a flat tax, it doesn't mean that person's not going to pay more. They are going to pay more. It's the same rate. But currently we have what's called a progressive system, meaning so at one income level, you're paying 15%. A higher level, you're paying 20%. A higher level than that, 25%, whatever the 28 or 30, whatever it is, the current tax rate. Like I said, I'll have my numbers lined up for next week. But that's a progressive system. But if even in a flat tax, like I said, if I'm making $1 million and if the flat tax is 10%, I'm still going to pay $100,000 in taxes, much more than you in doing that. But again, the idea here and the purpose of the conversation tonight is when you have these nonprofit organizations that find ways to get around paying taxes because the government allows. And again, these organizations, again, the list that I showed earlier, in fact, I'll bring it back up, of all the different types of organizations that are allowed to declare themselves to be a 501c organization and be exempt from taxes. And it doesn't seem to have anything to do with necessarily, you're not necessarily doing a charity or whatever. It's all different types of groups and organizations that are able to take advantage of this regardless of the money that they're making. And is like I was asking a question, is the issue. So again, all these different types. So again, the 501c3, again, the big thing there is, again, those who give to the 501c3, you're allowed as the donor to deduct what you gave. So if I gave $1 million to an organization, to a 501c3 organization, I can basically write off that deduction off the taxes that I pay. And so, so they give that, but all these different, again, business and professional leagues, social and recreational clubs, veterans organizations, utility and cooperative associations, fraternities without insurance benefits, labor and agricultural organizations, 501c8, fraternal societies with insurance benefits. I mean, I'm still asking a question, just going all, and these have been probably set up for decades, if not hundreds of years. And I'm asking the question, why are these allowed to? What was the pitch to the to the congressional leaders who drafted up bills, who allowed these things to go into play? What was the pitch? Or was it, look, here, we'll give you some money if you make it easy for us. Here's some money. Here's some contributions for your campaign if you set up these structures for us to kind of go and do what we do. But I'm asking the question, what if we went and eliminated, with the exception of very few, if we eliminated a lot of these organizations? What would that do as far as taking away a lot of the abuses that that these organizations use? If the idea here is, one, everyone should be taxed, even then the Bible says you should pay taxes, and that everyone gets taxed fairly, and everybody gets taxed once. Now, I don't think that you should necessarily get taxed. Again, this is next week. Should you get taxed when you're living, and should you be taxed when you die? Debt taxes and all these things, especially for property, transfer of property to a family member, things of that nature. We can hash that up next week. But this week, dealing specifically with these organizations, should these organizations enjoy these exemptions, and why do we have them? Was this simply just a quid pro quo deal that will support you if you help set this up for us? And is this part of the problem? Why things are the way they are, that people are able to hide millions of dollars in these organizations, not pay anything in taxes? And is that really where the problem is? Is the problem with our government that allowed these entities to exist? Go ahead.
So, like I said before, if whatever organization, the NFL, the World Series, whatever, if they're considered a nonprofit, then they cannot be making all this money. Number one, they're making a ridiculous amount of money, and they're a nonprofit. Yeah, I don't believe that shit for 1 minute. I think that is a bullshit way to say, hey, I can keep all my money myself, so go fuck off. And they found a loophole. And it's probably like the schools, like, oh, this senator went to that college or high school. They want to keep, help them out to keep them in good face. Then all of them just same thing with high schools. They do make money, bro. All those, sporting events, they make some money. Nowhere near as colleges, but they make some money off those events. You can't tell me they're sitting there selling all these snacks at the events. You're paying $5 for one hot dog. You're not making some money. Think what I'm saying.
Mm.
I'm not saying they should get taxed same as college. I'm not nowhere near, but they should get taxed on something.
Mm.
They should budget their money better. Now you have the board or this. There's another way to say, hey, I'm making money just sitting on a board.
Mm.
All these colleges, all this stuff. I'm surprised how many of them they call themselves a nonprofit when they're not. How do you tell me a golf tournament is not on nonprofit when it's on live global TV?
Yeah, but I agree. But now look, Liberty Twitcher, you're saying, and again, I appreciate. I may not agree with everything you're saying, but again, I certainly appreciate you sharing your opinions. We got no beef here. To the extent there are loopholes in the tax code is because Congress saw fit to allow those exemptions for the public good. But again, I think it's fair to ask, with professional sports organizations, what public good is that? Or for the NCAA, what good is that? Are these things are these things worth discussing? I think it's fair to have it. I think it's fair to have those kind of conversations. Are there too many of them? Are there too many loopholes? But yeah, those, like I said, if you can show you're doing the work, I got no issue. If a church is doing the work, I got no issue with giving them some breaks or whatever. Because like I said, I think generally my feeling is that private organizations usually can do better. Given the wasteful spending in our government, generally they do better in the private sector than they do in the government sector. So if you want to give them a little break for that, like I said, I got no issue with that. But to say that, we shouldn't have the discussion because they won't give it up. I mean, yeah, that's what the conversations is. If we didn't have a discussion, you could sign off for the night and we don't have a show. But we want to have this, again, some of these things people don't want to talk about. People don't want to talk about churches and whether or not they should be paying tax or not. Again, we belong to churches. So again, I'm not here to say they should or they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have an open conversation. And again, if you don't want to be part of the conversation, I don't know what to tell you. But again, I appreciate your views. You share your views, and some of them I agree with. But we don't have to certainly just shut down the conversation because you think, well, it won't happen. But why? And again, it's interesting. The people who are making the most, the people who are benefiting from this are usually in the upper 1%. But again, if we say that, we the people, we talk about the voters, and most of us are not in that conversation, but somehow people get convinced that, it's good that these organizations shouldn't pay any money or the wealthy shouldn't pay anything or whatever. Are you getting something at the end of the day? What about you? What about your family? I think it's fair for people to have these, you want to call them populist conversations, but I think it's fair for people to ask. So I don't care if it's government waste or if it's the rich finding ways to hide their money or what have you. Now, you want to say the rich are paying more in taxes than anyone else? Okay, but that's a conversation for next week. We can talk about that and see what's going on. But again, we just had a guy earlier. Trey says he doesn't pay hardly any money in taxes. So why should corporations? So which one is it? Are corporations paying taxes, or are they paying the most taxes? So I'm seeing two different views and opinions tonight. But those are very drastically different opinions of people. And so again, that's why we're having the having the conversation tonight. So yeah, I mean, but again, I appreciate you being here, and anyone who certainly wants to offer an opinion. Rankly designed. Churches should not be tax exempt. You're looking at nonprofits, but there's a ton of churches collecting tithe. They're not paying tax, way more than nonprofits. That's a view. That's an opinion. Anton, a good number of churches are getting tax breaks because they make significant number of donations to politicians. Most of them that lean right. Like I said, it's according to the stats. When you get that 501, you're supposed to be non-political, non-partisan. You may even make an argument that you could be that you can be political. The idea, though, is you're not supposed to be partisan. And again, we've seen this, Turning Point USA. They just had an event a couple days ago. They're very outspoken. And so again, should you, and I'm not saying that a church shouldn't be willing to say what it wants to say, but here's the deal. Give up your 501c3. And if you strongly believe that is, you think it's right, you think it's moral to go out there and say controversial things that are not PC, and you want to upset people and all that kind of stuff, go ahead. If you really believe in your convictions, what difference does it make if you're a 501c or not? If this is what you believe, and this is what you think people need to hear, then what difference does it make? So I'm asking that question also. Would you, as an institution, as a body, to say what you think is morally right, would you be willing to give up your 501c in order to continue to make those opinions without any rubber? Because again, you still have First Amendment, and that's free speech protected by the First Amendment. So if you want to say that, whatever the issue is, if you want to go out there and say it, I think you should have the right to say it. But should you enjoy a tax exempt status on top of it? Some people say yes. Some people say no.
They will never give it up, Paul, because they get exempt. But they want to say whatever they want. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And it's one
or the other.
Yeah. So you can almost say like the nation state, again, because of politicians, they're the ones who kind of set up the system the way it is. Rankly, a design, again, churches and nonprofits benefit from taxes with police public infrastructure, but there's a larger issue at hand because the government always claims that they have that they do not have money for the poor, but they also have money for war. Again, that's on also. Where's again? So next week we're going to get into that. Where is our tax money going? Or when we have people saying, "Oh, we don't have money for these programs," but give us a trillion and a half more dollars to fund a war effort. Money's coming from somewhere. Or we're just going to borrow it and just going to increase the national debt, which we don't even talk about anymore. It's almost like baked in that the national debt is what it is, and
it's disgusting.
That's a pipe dream right now. We're never paying this national debt. That's by the time a few more years, it's going to be like 50 trillion. So it's no one. So that's a pipe dream. Yeah, we can stop that conversation. When are we going to pay the national debt off, or even when we're going to have a balanced budget again? That is no, that's certainly a discussion. We have here Anna Masena Z. Most U.S. corporations pay no income taxes. So again, I've heard two different views tonight. I had one view that the wealthy pay the most in taxes. I guess that just taxes on their income, on their payroll, or we're talking about corporations. And should corporations be exempt? But essentially, even in the court system, right? Yeah, the Supreme Court said corporations are people too. That allowed corporations to give billions of dollars of politics. That changed our politics, where you didn't just have to take from individual donors, but corporations could give all this kind of money that they're exempt from in taxes and give to political campaigns. Again, not picking a side. But people say that's one of the worst things that happen to politics, is that decision when they say corporations are people too, and that they should be able to give to political campaigns. So the whole
example here, why I feel a certain way I do. So 5 years ago, when my mom first got diagnosed with cancer, I was getting all these bills right and left. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, wow, how the fuck I'm going to pay for all this shit? So rent was doing all this stuff. So the hospital, my case manager was like, we have a program for people who are under income. We can pay 1 month of your rent and we're going to pay off your medical bills. I'm like, sign me up. I want them just like that. They go, well, calm down. Like, we have to go through the motions. You have to get approved and all this stuff. You're going to get approved because your income was like nothing at the time. I think it was at the time of between 55 and 60,000, something like that, like my income. And my mom has zero income. And because mom has zero income, she's approved automatically for that program. So because I'm her caregiver and she lives with me, I have to put my income with whatever. We did all that paperwork. We filed it. It took me about 3 to 4 months, I believe it was. And then 2 or 3 months, I get the check in the mail. And then, great, I paid the rent off and everything. For 1 month, I had to relax. I didn't have to stress out or anything. That tax season came around. Guess what I had to pay on that shit?
Oh, that's income. They count that as income.
Motherfuckers. I'm thinking to myself. So if I have to pay for that shit, fuck to everybody who's saying no church to pay, no problem. Like, fuck you. If I got donated a check, help me out when I was struggling, and I got paid tax on it, you motherfuckers got to pay that taxes as well as I do. Nobody's getting exempt to that.
But now some people say that's fair. I mean, if I gave you out of my pocket $5,000,
please do.
That's income. I know you would. But it's weird. You would have to pay income on it now, unless now I can get away. I can say no, that was an income, that was a gift or something. We'd have to do something, or we just wouldn't talk about it. But I'm just saying. But hypothetically, if it came out, I wrote you a check a personal check for $5,000. There's some rules, there's some loopholes or whatnot, but that's income. So again, if an organization gives you that money for whatever reason, that's income. And scholars, some things like I know scholarships. Some scholarships are tax exempt. I know for school, and my daughter being in school and whatnot, a lot of those things again coming from these charitable organizations. Like I said, and I'm not saying that you don't have charitable organizations that do a lot of good work. I don't want charities to stop doing a good work. And again, could you make the argument if they start getting taxed that they'll stop doing the work? I don't know. It depends. If your work is if you work for, like I said, Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which is one of the big ones, that's like $5-6 billion a year. You mean to tell me you're going to stop cancer research because you're getting taxed on that $5 or $6 billion that you're getting annually. If you're truly about curing cancer, then why would you stop? And again, and this to me, this gets down to again the purpose of the organization. If you're saying we want to help people, we want to contribute back to society as a sacrifice, then what difference does it make if I'm taxed or not? If I believe that cancer research, we're doing a moonshot to cure cancer and we think we can do this and we really think we can help people, if it's going to cost me another, and I don't know, we can debate what the tax percentage should be. 10%, or you want it to be the rate, the upper limit, whatever you want to decide that is. We haven't even talked about what the tax rate should be. But let's just say if they tax 10% of those donations, are you going to stop doing the work because of that 10%? If you are, especially if you're one of these bigger institutions, that I'm going to question how sincere you were about wanting to do that work, or were you just looking for a tax haven for yourself? So I'm starting to. So again, those are questions that I'm asking. Are you really legit? Because anybody can set up a 501. You get someone who can write now you get AI. They can write out the documents. You just put in a few words in. What's your organization? What are you guys trying to do? Whatever. Yada yada yada. You get that status. You can start raising funds and doing whatever it is that you do. How serious you are about doing that? If you want to help kids, what difference does it make if you're going to get taxed on the work that you do as long as you're helping kids? So again, I think for those who are creating these organizations, you have to ask yourself these questions. All right, so Presenta said, when you have colonizers that write the rules, they find every way to see themselves as exemption to the rules. Rankly design. If they start getting taxed, they won't stop doing the work, but it will significantly slow. If they do lose the tax exempt status, rich people also can't write off large charitable expenses. Well, again, depends on what it is. Again, not every the 501c3s allow you to deduct your expenses, but there's a ton of different 501s where that status is not there, but they still exist. So again, a lot of that is for the benefit of the members of that organization. So again, it depends on the type of 501 that you have written up, or some wealthy people, multimillionaire more, make donations to nonprofits, oftentimes their own, as a way not to pay taxes. Again, that's how the system is set up, and some people would say that's a very smart thing to do. Create your own, so you're rich. Create your own nonprofit. Pay to that nonprofit, and voila, you don't pay any taxes. Some people, if you think is that a good thing, if you think that's a good thing or not, then that's a discussion. But some people do think that way. I personally do not. And last one here from Rank Lake, and thank you for being. I think this might be the first time you've been here. I'm not sure, but I appreciate you being very active in the chat tonight. But that is a part of the scam. You shouldn't be able to get write-offs if you sit on the board of that nonprofit. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would agree with that as well. And again, thank you for your comments tonight. So that's
for you guys who just come on, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. We do a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're enjoying the content that we're providing, certainly certainly on the again Black Man Unfiltered Network or the Sparta HQ Network, again, consider becoming a subscriber to the network. We have a show every week, and again, this is a collab. I mean, the gray area is basically it's me and Peter's show. And we stream on both channels. We appreciate that. We may, who knows, in the future, we may stream to other channels as well. But certainly, we appreciate you guys being part of the conversation with that. And again,
and any opinions are free. Is like we take your opinions seriously. Like we might agree on it sometimes, but we take your opinions seriously.
100%. And like I said, I said we welcome again different opinions, but again we want to have a respectful place. The only thing we ask for is again you give respect, you get respect back. Let's lower the temperature. Let's not be using derogatory language. We just want to have a conversation over stuff that everybody probably talks about, or things about it you probably heard of. And we want to, entertain those thoughts in this space. Like I said, this gray area. This is one of the bigger ones that I've seen in terms of these types of organizations. And again, me and Peter, again, we belong to churches, so we're stepping on some sacred cows tonight, quite frankly. Because if my pastor heard, it's like, oh man, what do you mean tax the church? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but certainly he may raise an eye. Or Father Casadino, he was like, "What? What do you mean we start paying taxes? What's wrong with you, Peter?" So again, we're not afraid. We're not going to run away from these conversations. Like I said, a lot of people are thinking about it. If you had to write that tax check to the government this year, you're asking to see how you can get a break. And so again, I thought this was an opportunity to do so. Again, Frankly Design, I work in the nonprofit industry, so I see it firsthand, but glad to be here. We're glad you're here. And again, the fact that you work in that industry and you chose to be here tonight, shout out to BMU for the hashtags or the things to get the show. Recognize that would draw you here. We appreciate you being here tonight and giving contributions from somebody who works in the industry. Again, salute to you for being part of this conversation tonight.
But it's part of the also conversation we haven't talked, like I said earlier, with the Winning Warrior Project was nonprofit, but the CEO was literally walking away with millions at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we can stop that kind of scam going on?
Yeah.
Personally,
and some of these guys get caught, some of these guys get prosecuted. But it's interesting. Again, you get prosecuted for these crimes, and most of these like federal offenses usually. And who knows? You may get a pardon because depending on how much money you have, depending on how much money you give, you may get a pardon. Even though, for a lot of these high crimes and misdemeanors, for a lot of these what do they call them? These white collar type crimes. Yeah, a lot of these guys really suffer the consequences for the actions, where a guy, gets arrested for petty theft and he's, put in jail for 10 years. But so again, that may be another discussion in terms of the criminal justice system, in terms of why is it that, again, wealthy people don't seem to get their fair share of justice, whereas people on the lower end of the totem pole, they don't, they seem to get treated unfairly. Again, that could be another discussion. You may agree or disagree with that statement, but that is something that we can certainly discuss in a future episode. But I think we can start to put the wheels down and start to land this plane. Again, I want to thank you guys for being with us this evening on this show. Certainly, as always, the chat has been fire tonight. Really appreciate you guys being part of it. Frankly Design, appreciate you being here tonight. Liberty Twitcher, again, you're always welcome in this space. Regardless, I appreciate you being here. I got Anton, Braxton, Steak Fiend, certainly in the chat tonight. Appreciate you being here as well. Quiet King 24, appreciate you being here tonight. The coach in the building, Coach Ferg. I got Trey. I'll see you on the 1-on-1 Sports Show probably this Wednesday here. But again, as BMU said, I smell fish. Yeah, some of this stuff is fishy. And we have seen scandals of people. You're giving your donations, you believe in an organization that they're doing the right thing by people, and you find out. But again, it happens in churches too. It happens in churches all the time.
You sure that's not his upper lip he's smelling this time?
I'm not going there.
I just did.
Yeah. But we see this in churches all the time. Pastors running away with money, or some accountant in the company stole millions of dollars from a church account and whatnot. We see these abuses all the time. And the sad thing about it is, again, for people who have a genuine desire to want to give to something where they know their money is going to a good cause, a good purpose, that they really want to be a part of something, how it breaks the trust with the public. And again, that site that I was talking about earlier, this might be a good resource for people if you want to evaluate a charitable organization before you go there. So again, this organization here, again, Charity Watch, CharityWatch.com or .org. Again, they have all types of links and information, ranking in reviewing charities and whatnot. Again, it has the information on the compensation structure for a lot of these individuals. CEO compensation, salaries, and whatnot. So again, if you want to give to an organization, you may want to do your research on that organization to know that your money's going to a certainly going to a good place. It also ranks, again, if you want to know ones with an F ranking, some of the worst charities to give to, they'll have a lot of information there. And there's other sites also that do just kind of monitoring of organizations, but it happens. Religious organizations have been exposed to this. Healthcare organizations, all types of different charities have been a part of that as well. So again, do your research on whether or not you decide to give, or you may want to do like other people and you just give to the need. I mean, there's room to help a whole lot of people already around you. Like, you don't have to go to an organization to see that there's a family that could certainly need some resources or something, or somebody who could use a hand with something. You might not be able to fully support, but again, that may give you a better sense of satisfaction knowing that you gave to a direct cause versus giving to an organization, and again, the money gets lost in the ether, and you don't know if that money is really going to make a difference. Again, that ad where it says, okay, 5 cents a day feeds a child, what are they eating? Are you just feeding them rice every day? Are they going to get some protein, some vegetables, some carbohydrates? So it's like, yeah, is this going to be a high protein meal? Is this going to be something that's going to really help them really develop? Or are you talking about just feeding them a bowl of rice every day? I mean, is that, is better than nothing, but is that really going to be what they need in order to mature? And is that really going to affect the world that they're living in? Some of these areas are war-torn, disease, famine, all kinds of things that are going on in these countries. And in fact, that really affected my whole view of having children. Because I think that, especially for a lot of religious conservatives, they talk about the idea of, certainly having more children or against deletions and things of that nature. But again, I see a lot of these videos of people having kids, and they used to really bother me. And I used to say, well, why are you having kids? I mean, you know that the chance of this kid getting out of to 2 or 3 years old is very minimal because you don't have resources. You barely have, yourself to even breastfeed this kid. So why are you even going to have this kid in this area, But people, they're going to do what they're going to do. But it's just sad to see kids that are basically being born to die. And that was just something that really changed my view overall on, again, I think children, in fact, I even said this earlier today, I think children should grow up in a world where they're wanted and that and that they'll be nurtured. And if you can't provide that, then please don't have children. Because, again, no child deserves to come into a world like a lot of these children, unfortunately, are born into. But, people they want to, they're not maybe thinking about kids when they're doing the deed or whatever. But that's a side note. That's something, just on top of my mind. But again, I want, good organizations, people with good intentions to do good work. But again, I think certainly if you want to talk about charity, that's oftentimes a sacrifice. And we got to ask the question, what are these people sacrificing? A lot of these salaries that these guys are getting, they can easily get in the private sector. So why not just work there? But, if they paid you, instead of $14 million a year, if they paid you $1 million, if you think it's worth it, would you still do it? I think those are questions I think we need to ask. But we're going to go into some final thoughts. Regularly, we have done shows in the past on healthcare. If you go back to some of our earlier shows, we did do that. We may cycle back and do similar shows again. And certainly if you have some experience in that healthcare space, certainly that could be useful, beneficial. But we're going to certainly look to land this plane. Again, another I think good show. Hopefully this was a good conversation and certainly some things to think about personally in the houses of worship that you belong to or certain organizations that you support. Maybe you might want to start asking some questions in terms of whether or not these are organizations that are worthy or worth supporting. But Pete, certainly you can give your final thoughts as we land this plane.
Like at the beginning of the show, I like to know, it's If you're making a certain amount of money, you're not a nonprofit at that point. You make more, you pay more. Simple. That's how it works. I'm sorry it hurts your success, but guess what? That's part of being successful. Giving back.
Mhm.
More you give, more you take. That's how it works in life, unfortunately.
Mhm.
You cannot go either way without it. Church, sorry for the casino, but if a church is making so much money, if not, like if it has one of these mega church, yeah, you're definitely need to pay taxes.
He's not going to talk to you on Sunday.
I'm sorry.
He's not going to talk to you on Sunday. He's going to be very upset. You're going to get a call very soon. Yeah, you may get that call. Panayotis, to my office.
No, he wouldn't say my office. He was supposed to say, when do you have coffee? Or let's get me for lunch. That's what he does. He's talking to me like, shit.
Or just remember, so when you have coffee, okay, so I just want to see the blood pressure level just kind of raise. You get that lump in your throat. It's like, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah,
So,
I did it again.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it needs to, I think we need a better system because it's not working.
Mhm.
That's all I have for tonight.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly for those, and again, I do respect some of the views. I mean, certainly, again, some of these have been set up certainly for social benefit, but not all of them. And again, there's political reasons, there's political contributions, there's a lot of political activity as to why these organizations exist, why they get the breaks that they do. So again, we're not naive here either. That this is definitely one hand washing the other, and that these organizations exist for the empowerment for their agendas, and they will certainly move through the political process to make sure that they get their agendas pushed. And so certainly we're not naive of that. And yeah, people may say it may be a pipe dream to say that any of these organizations will be reformed in any kind of way or what have you. But certainly, I think if people, for the general population, you can see some of what's going on, and just in your gut, you just think some of this stuff it doesn't seem fair, or just outright some of it's just not right. And again, when you do see these scandals in churches or organizations, and we start to ask ourselves, well, why are they getting this compensation, or why are they getting these exemptions? But again, I think like anything else, again, call me a pure populist here, but it's up to us. We elect people, and we raise agendas. I mean, other groups have certainly galvanized agendas, but the problem is, getting enough people to get upset about a particular issue before they start to take action on it. And so again, we have even, like I said, in the Congress now, we got a bill. I think again it's S5912, which is a bill in Congress right now that is being raised to take away that status for any organization that has over $500 billion in assets, which is still very high. Some people would certainly think that it should be less. S2519 is actually look it up. It's the Sports League Tax Exempt Status Limitation Act. That's a long name. But certainly, it's up to us. Do your research on it. If you think this is something that, should PGA, and now again, they even say now the PGA might be in trouble because with all the stuff that's going on now, if the Saudis pull out, then the PGA, you could be looking at all those guys who left the PGA to go to LIV, and then ultimately LIV bought the PGA. A lot of those guys could be found lacking. But again, like I said, like anything else, do your research, know what's out there. But again, we want to thank you guys for being part of the conversation tonight. Again, as you leave the show, make sure you hit the like button on the way out, both here, hop on over to Sparta HQ Network, could be a subscriber to the network. To both networks, as we continue to bring you content every week on different topics. Again, Wednesday, I do this one-on-one sports show here on the Black Men Unfiltered network. You'll also see us Tuesday night, Spartan Arena on Tuesday nights, where we talk about certainly different issues, and then there's a lot of fun stuff on the Sparta HQ Network. Also, there's a wrestling. If you guys are into pro wrestling, I know WrestleMania is going on tonight. My daughter, she's been sending me updates all night in terms of the wrestling. But certainly there's a Wrestle Talk show on Fridays on the Sparta HQ Network. We got a Hangout show where we talk about pop culture on Saturday nights. So just a lot of different content spread throughout the channel that we try to give the people. So a little different flavor of everything. So again, consider becoming a subscriber to the network. We're very close to monetization on the Smart HQ site, and certainly looking forward to that when that day happens. But certainly for myself, Mr. Bennett, and he is
This is Sparta!
the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panayotis. This is the gray area. I want to thank you guys once again for being with us on your Sunday. Have a great week. Take care. God bless. And we will see you next time. Good night.